I'm Benny. I am a UX manager at Vonage and the manager of the design system at Vonage. Vonage, just in case anyone doesn't know, it's leading business cloud communication. And my computer just went to sleep. That's Steve, by the way. It's the best bunny in the world. Yeah. What we wanted to talk to you about is first, let me show you what we've got, because this is just so you get an idea. This is what we've got. Obviously, we've got a sketch library. This is not all of it, but that's the main tool for our designers. Then we have a code base with its own documentation, you can see here. We started clearly in CSS and vanilla JavaScript to support all of the slightly older technologies out there. And then we went into building some framework-specific components for Angular and Vue.js. This is not because we're masochistic, it's because we started the design system at Vonage while Vonage already had so many products scattered around the globe, all made in basically different technologies. So one of the biggest challenges we had was, how do we support all of them? Thankfully, CSS is, it's pretty liked by everyone. Now, all of our main products are currently already onto our design system. Why am I bragging about this? Because a year and a half ago, we had no design system. So I do feel a little bit of right there. And here's the story of how we got there. Don't worry, it's not a very long story. A year and a half ago, which is roughly when I was hired, there was 3 people in the product design team. There was our director, Ken, myself in the middle, and Matt, who works from New Jersey. Matt, not Matteo. Those are 2 different people. So there was us, and there were 3 big product lines with their own sub-products. And this was how we felt about it. Worth mentioning that we were also not in the same place. Nothing of this was ever in the same place. That's why I was pretty excited that the topic of the evening was design on a global scale, because that was like our problem number 1. So this is not a very nice page, but that's kind of the point. This was what triggered the whole thing. As you saw, there was 3 of us, tons of products, tons of work, and suddenly our API platform needed a massive redesign. So at this point, we already had some pretty good designs in our other products. So we thought, okay, it should be easy enough to just recycle the components on the design side. We can even create our own little style guide, extrapolate them, standardize them. It's going to be fine. But what happens with the development part? The development part kind of looked like this. Those are 3 different products that we had at the same time that were supposed to have come out of the same component designed. The problem with a ton of developers working around the globe in a silo, as I'm pretty sure that most people in this room know, is if you rewrite something from scratch, you're not going to write it in exactly the same way, and it's not going to look exactly the same. I mean, it should, but production times, you're in a rush. It always happens. And for us, it was really difficult to collaborate with developers closely enough to do pixel-perfect designs. So this was where Ken, my director, had the stroke of genius of saying, hey, design systems are really hot right now, let's make one. Now, the idea was this. This is the last time I'm going to brag, I'm pretty good at CSS. So we thought we would take all of the components from the redesigns that we had already done. We knew that they were liked, so fair enough. And I would create CSS for all of them, generalized so that it could be reused. And we would use the API platform as kind of our proof of concept. This was perfect because this was happening in London. The development team for this was in London, sitting right next to me. So I could even help them with the implementation. I could fine-tune it with them, like still in a separate, reusable environment. But we could fine-tune it until it was ready for production. This way, at least in theory, once the dashboard was good enough to go live, the design system also would be good enough to be reused by others in production. Long story short, we rocked. It was a big success. It went well, pretty well. And at this point, the word sort of spread. We started having something to show for the design system that we were building, and little by little, some very kind other product people decided to give it a shot. And so we went from this, which was early 2018, with only one product, the dashboard, done in Volta, which by the name is the name of our design system. Later in 2018, most of our products had integrated with it. In the meantime, our team grew, which we were ready for because now we had a sketch library and a code base. And this is now. Our team just grew exponentially, and so did our business lines. Vonage acquired 2 pretty big companies last year, and that's what warranted the explosion. And we don't need to be scared about it because we have systems in place. Oh, you probably, I don't know if you noticed, but our mood improves in a direct proportion with the number of products integrating with Volta, because that was like life is easier and easier and easier and easier. Now, what did this mean for us? Going big obviously had its upsides and downsides. First off, starts from 3 people in the product design team, suddenly, boom, there's 11. This is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We've got a big team, we're really tight, we do some really great stuff, but it also means that we can't really improvise that much anymore. Especially as you've seen from the map, we're scattered across, like from San Francisco to Tel Aviv. So some of our guys don't even get to work together that much. Okay, we've got a sketch library, but style guides, processes, how do we go about things? You explain, but you need something written at some point. So this is where we came up with a process for evaluating whether a component should become part of the system, or whether you should reuse a current component, or whether you should create a modifier of that component. You get the gist. But basically, we officialized it so that everyone was on the same page about designing with Volta and offering up the possibility of new components if needed. This really works for us, probably also because the core development for Volta is part of the product design team. So we're all together. We see the designs before there's even a chance that they'll become a component. So we just made this Volta check as part of the design process. Another thing is, that is me. Over time, over this past year and a half, the development team for Volta also increased. It actually kind of doubled. And we got Matteo now, who also happens to be my brother, as you've heard. We did look for front-end developers everywhere, but I mean...
But I was the best.
Exactly. The problem is that also the frameworks that we need to support have multiplied. Again, with the acquisition of new companies, those companies were doing their own thing up until the time they were acquired. So suddenly React was in the mix. We had never catered for that, and they were using CSS in JS, which we did not cater for again. So all of this, plus still supporting our old stuff, meant we were not screwing around anymore. We were definitely, not that we ever were, but, you know, we really had to sit down and come up with a solid plan. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Matteo, not because I didn't participate in the plan, but because he's better at explaining it.
Hope so. Hello. I'm quite nervous. The main reason is, as you can see, we had to solve a lot of issues. So when we got the invite to come here, we said, oh great, there's a meetup about designing systems, so we're going to learn a lot, we're going to get a lot of great tips. But the thing was, no, you're going to speak at it. So, okay. So, yeah. So the main issue, as you could see, was that our company was slightly different. It had a different situation. So we don't have like a product and a product with some expands on that product, so that we could decide the technology and then basically build the design system on it. But we had different product. It might happen from time to time that we acquire other companies, and they all come with their own team, using their own technology. So the way we needed to think the design system was to accommodate all of those technology, to think something that it would be solid for other teams with different levels of expertise, and each one using different frameworks. So what tipped us over, well, didn't really tip us over, but the main point was when we acquired a new company that was using React on top of Angular and Vue that we were already supporting. That's when we had to think about something really solid that would work with. So yeah, change it for me, please. So okay, so what we thought about. So it's me and Benny working from London and create the main core design system. So we create the CSS and the HTML and the vanilla JS, which is basically up to now the single source of truth for everyone to build their component in. Then we have other teams. We have a team in New Jersey that works mainly with Angular, and they collaborate and they basically recreate their component in Angular. Then we have our own team in London, and that mainly works in Vue. The team in Tel Aviv also works with Vue. And then we have this new team in Poland which works with React. And we needed a way so that they could collaborate with us in the easiest way possible. And different level of expertise means that we needed to build something that was easy for everyone to use, and it was streamlined enough that we wouldn't be the bottleneck, because basically me and Benny at the moment are the only one who have the overview across all of the products in Vonage, which means that if a team wants to collaborate and create a component, we are the one that are going to tell them, yes, this will work for you, but wouldn't work for other teams. So we need to think it in a different way. And that's why we needed to think something that would help automate as much as possible and streamline for everyone. And cool, so here's the process. So we start obviously with the design phase where we decide that we need a new component or to change an existing one. What we do is me and Benny then we create the CSS and the HTML structure and the vanilla JS, and we use a Storybook as a tool to collect all the different components. And then we use Backstop.js as a front-end testing. We take snapshot of every single different component, and we create the reference for it. And then everything together is going to form basically a private NPM package, which is the way that we distribute all the design system to everyone. Then we have different repos, and there's a different repo for basically each framework. We have the Angular one, the Vue one, React.js, and Future.js is not a framework you have never heard about, but it's meant to be whatever will come in the future. It needs to work for everything, of course. So what we do is we distribute everything with an NPM package. They're going to get everything. They're going to get the main structure for Storybook. They're going to get the reference for Backstop.js. And each one is going to be basically, they have each own configuration file, which is meant to be as easy as possible to tailor the library for their own framework. So that one thing, for example, there is on the configuration package is they're going to list all the components that they actually have, because basically different teams means they have different timelines, they need to work on different products. So every time we update our design system, it's not automatic that every team is going to just pick up the new component and create it immediately in their own framework and put it there. So we need to take into account that they might lag a bit behind in terms of coverage. And so that's why we use a configuration file. They list the component they have. They're going to create their own instance of Storybook. They only list the component that they actually have. Then they're going to run Backstop.js, which is going to test it against the reference only of the component that they actually need. And yeah, what am I forgetting? Nothing. Okay. Yeah, and this is how Storybook looks like. I don't know if someone uses it, but this is how it looks. So on the left-hand side, we have the list of components. It's meant to make sense for the developer, because that's what they use to pick up the new component and just copy and paste it into their product. So on the main section, on the top, you're going to see how the component looks like. On the bottom, you have the code. They're just going to literally go there, choose the component they need, copy and paste the code that they need, and put it there. Then the cool stuff is on the right-hand side. They are the knobs. And basically, the way it works is that they can change. They have a list of modifiers, basically. So they can change the size. They can change the status of the button. And it's going to update automatically the code on the main section so that they create exactly what they need to use and just copy and paste the code. And we're going to give you a live example. And yeah, this is it. This is actually a Storybook. So you see the buttons, and the right-hand side you have the knobs. And if you click around, you're going to see the button changes, the code changes. They're just going to go in, copy and paste whatever they need, play with it. And easier than that, we don't know how to do it. And yeah, and that's it. So that's our system. Yes.
So the only thing to add is that we thought this for developers. So this Storybook is becoming our new documentation. What we realized really quickly, which ties in a little bit with what Anthony was talking about, is that this little tool of knobs is actually really helping our designers as well to fully understand how the design system works. Very often I get the other designers coming to me and saying, can I do this within the design system? Is this a modifier that I can take advantage of? And well, now they can kind of play with it and figure it out, as well as asking. This has really been helpful in that sense. The code is very clear, so even junior developers can go on and just copy it, and designers can just experiment with all of the modifiers that we have for components. That's okay. So thanks everyone. We just wanted to leave it. So we have this thing. We send out a newsletter with all of the main developments of Volta to all the developers that help us and the developers that want to stay up to date. And one way to make sure that everyone reads is that we added a puppy of the day. So thanks everyone, and thanks Weldy for inviting us over.
Thanks, buddy.